So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to shift your identity to become the version of yourself that will have everything in reality. And I want to use this case study to explain to you how Michael Jackson killed his old identity to become the legendary version of himself, the legendary artist, musician. How he took the world by storm is because he programmed himself to be that version of himself before the world saw it. And so Michael Jackson did not become Michael Jackson by accident. Now, the masterclass is not really just about him. It's more of a case study. The real subject is identity transformation. Because if you study Michael Jackson deeply enough, you begin to realize something most people miss. Michael Jackson did not simply become one of the greatest artists of all time because he was just talented. Talent was involved, practice, work ethic, obsession, opportunity, all those things were involved. But none of those things explain the entire transformation. There were other talented singers, there were other incredible dancers, there were other child stars, there were other artists with record labels, producers, choreographers, and stage experience. But there was something different about how he did it. He did not merely improve, he transformed who he was. And that distinction is everything. Improvement is when the old identity gets better. Transformation is when the old identity is no longer the one operating. That is the real difference. And so most people are trying to improve the identity that created their current life. They're trying to make the old self richer, the old self more successful, the old self more visible, more confident, more disciplined. But the problem is the old self has a range. The old self has a ceiling, has a nervous system, has subconscious associations, has emotional patterns. The old self has beliefs about what is possible, has a relationship with pressure, visibility, success, being seen. And as long as that identity remains in charge, reality tends to reorganize around the same pattern. And this is why people make temporary progress and then return back to the same life. They did not change identity. They changed behavior for a season, and behavior without identity eventually collapses back into what's familiar. And that is why Michael Jackson is such an important case study. Because he was not just an artist becoming more successful. He was a person separating from an inherited identity and constructing a new one. You see, the Jackson 5 identity was real. It gave him exposure, training, skill. It gave him industry experience and stage familiarity. But it was an inherited identity. Little Michael, the child star, the lead singer of the Jackson 5, the gifted kid in the family, the young performer inside of a group. But that identity could not take him to a certain point. I conceptualized it on my journey when I made my brand. I realized that I could not do it with my old name. I needed a new identity to then manifest a different life. And he knew the same thing. He realized that that version of himself could not go to the levels that he wanted or he saw in his mind. The identity could take him to a certain point, but it could not carry the full vision. And this is where most people get stuck in their own lives. The identity that got you here may not be the identity that can take you to the next level. The identity that helped you survive may not be the identity that helps you expand. The identity that helped you get your first clients may not be the identity that scales the business. The identity that helped you become known locally may not be the identity that makes you undeniable in your industry. That is why transformation requires death, not a physical death, identity death. The old self has to lose authority. And Michael Jackson understood this at a level most people never will. He wrote things in his journal. I am a new person now. The old me is behind. I will be magic. We can program ourselves to be the people we want to be. These are in his notes. You can search them online. Those are not normal motivational statements. This is not someone saying, I hope I become successful. This is someone consciously attempting to reconstruct identity. He was not just trying to have a better career. He was reprogramming who he understood himself to be. And this is where manifestation becomes practical. Manifestation is not about sitting around hoping life changes. Manifestation is the process of becoming the identity whose reality naturally reflects what you desire. Reality reflects identity. Not what you casually want, not what you affirm, not what you visualize, not what you post online, and not what you tell people. Reality reflects the identity that is dominant, repeated, emotionally charged, embodied, and stabilized. And that is why this case study matters. Once you understand how Michael Jackson transformed himself from an inherited identity to a self-created identity, you can understand the same mechanism in your field. If you're an entrepreneur, this applies to your business. If you are a creator, this applies to your content. A trader, this applies to your execution. An artist, this applies to your artistry. An actor, this applies to your presence. An athlete, this applies to your performance. And if you're a leader, this applies to your command. The industry changes. The mechanism does not. Reality responds to identity. Michael Jackson did not wait for reality to tell him who he was. He decided internally first. Then he began living, rehearsing, training, creating, moving, dressing, speaking, and performing from that self until the world had no choice but to respond to it. That is what we're breaking down today. Not him being a celebrity, but Michael Jackson as an identity transformation. And so part one, the old identity is not useless, but it is limited. The first mistake is people make identity work is like demonizing the old self. The old identity was not always useless. It was necessary. For example, in his case, the Jackson 5 identity gave him something important, gave him skill, discipline, experience. But the old identity was not, so the old identity is not bad, but it was limited. And this is important. When people hear kill the old self, kill the old identity, they think that it means rejecting everything about who they are, but that's not what this means. You're not killing the lessons, the skills, the wisdom, the experience, the part that made you capable. You're killing the authority of the old identity. That's different. The old identity can give you the tools, but it cannot remain the operator that takes you to the next level. And that's where most people get stuck. They're already capable. They have the skill, they have the experience, they have the knowledge, they have the proof, they have the wins, but they're still operating from an old self concept. So they keep trying to create a new reality using an identity calibrated to an old one. A business owner may be trying to scale to $50K a month while still emotionally operating from the identity of someone who feels lucky to make $10K. A creator may be trying to build a massive audience while still operating from the identity of someone afraid to be fully seen. A trader may be trying to execute cleanly while still operating from the identity of someone who does not trust himself under pressure. You see the contradiction. And the contradiction creates distortion. You cannot build the next reality while the old identity is still secretly defining what feels normal for you. Michael Jackson's old identity was the child star. That identity had a ceiling, not because he lacked talent, but because the world had already defined him. Family had defined him. The industry had defined him. The audience had defined him. The group had defined him. His past had defined him. And if he accepted that definition permanently, he would have remained inside the old role. And this is exactly what happens to most people. They accept the identity reality gave them. They accept the family role, the industry role, the market, the social role, the past role, and they accept this is just who I am. And then they wonder why nothing changes. Because they're still loyal to the identity that reality assigned to them. Romans 12:2, do not be conformed by the world, but be renewed by a transformation of your mind. You see, Michael Jackson had to stop being only what he had been known as. And that is why the old me is behind is such an important statement. It's not just an affirmation, it's severing. It is the internal declaration that the past no longer has the final authority over the self. And that is the first step of real identity transformation. You have to recognize the difference between what built you and what is now binding you. Because sometimes the identity that once gave you structure becomes the same identity that keeps you trapped. And so Michael Jackson did not chase a dream. He built a self-concept. Majority of people are chasing outcomes. They're looking for the world for external validation, confirmation, signs, proof that they're them. But he did it differently. He built the self-concept internally first. And the outcome is still external, but the self-concept is internalized. An outcome says, I want to be successful. I need to see success to know that I'm successful. A self-concept says, I am the kind of person through whom this success becomes natural. And that is the shift. Majority of people are outcome obsessed because they're still trying to get reality to give them permission to become someone else. When the business grows, I'll feel like a real business owner, or I feel successful. When the audience grows, I feel like I'm famous. I feel like I'm a true creator. When the money comes in, I'll feel secure. I'll feel rich. When the opportunities arrive, I'm going to feel chosen. When people respect me, I'll feel respectable. I'll feel powerful. But that's backwards. That means the external world is still the source of your power. That means the outside world is your God. That means the physical plane is still being treated as the cause of reality. But the physical plane is the effect. Reality is a mirror. And so the way I explain this to people is you need to understand that we operate from multiple levels of reality. And so look at everything that is in existence in the world. From the phone, a chain, a shirt. Where did the ideas come to make these things? The mind. And so if you look at reality from cars to even people, because even to make a child, you have to conceive the thought of having a kid or having the interaction to have a child. Everything must stem from the mind. So the mind is the creator, is the cause of reality. Because without the mind, I wouldn't even be able to lift my hand. And so the mind is the cause of everything. Nothing in creation could exist without the mind. And that is why the first law in Hermeticism says, the law of mentalism. All is one. We live in a collective universal mind. The universe is mental. The universe is we live in a mental universe. And so everything in this creation of this world has stemmed from the mind, and then it is physically created. It is the thought first that then manifests into physical reality. But most people are operating as if they're waiting for physical reality to give them the mental confirmation. When I see it external, then I know that I will be this, or I know I will have this. But that is backwards. That means the external world is still the source, is still your God. Reality is a mirror, as it says in the law of correspondence, in the second universal law in Hermeticism, as within, so without, and as above, so below. And the scripture clarifies this as the kingdom of God is within you, Luke 17:21. The kingdom, the creation of life, is created from within. And so reality is a mirror. Identity is the one that is standing in front of it. Michael Jackson did not wait for the mirror to change. He changed the person standing in front of the mirror. That is the essence of what he did. When he wrote, I will be magic, that was not a goal. That was a self-concept he was implanting in his subconscious. He was not saying, I want people to think my performances are good. He was defining the energetic signature of the identity. Magic. That word matters because Michael Jackson did not build the identity around being merely talented. He built it around creating an experience. I mean, the guy was having people faint in his shows. He was just standing there holding the frame and people were knocking themselves out. He built an identity around creating an experience, an energy. Remember, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. He was transferring his energy into this entity that he was building. And this is one of the most important lessons for you in any field. Do not define what you get. Define what you are becoming. An entrepreneur and a business owner should not just say, I want to make 50K a month. That's not an identity. That's just a number. The deeper question is, who is the person from whom 50K a month is normal? How do they think? How do they make decisions? How do they handle pressure? How do they view clients? How do they view money? How do they respond to slow weeks? How do they speak, sell, lead? What do they no longer tolerate? What do they no longer fear? What is normal to them? An artist should not just say, I want to be known. Known as what? What is the identity? What is the world? What is the emotional signature? What does your art make people feel? What do you represent? What do you experience when they encounter your work? What is the standard you embody? He understood this. He was not merely becoming a better singer. He was creating an identity that held a world. The glove, the movement, the precision, the silence before the explosion, the pauses, the fashion, the sound, the visual language, the childlike wonder, the intensity, the perfectionism, the mystery, the emotion. All of it became part of the self-concept. And this is why his transformation was so powerful. He did not just change one habit. He organized everything around the new identity. And that is how identity work actually functions. A real identity shift is not random. It is architectural. You are designing a whole internal operating system. Your beliefs must match it. Your perception must match it. Your expectation must match it. Your behavior must match it. Your emotional reactions must match it. Your environment, your standards, your repetition. That is why many people fail. They pick a new affirmation, but they keep operating from the old system. They say, I am successful, but they still expect failure. They react from scarcity. They interpret delays as rejection. They see visibility as danger. They make money mean pressure. They make attention mean judgment. They make success mean isolation. So the affirmation never stabilizes because the identity structure contradicts it. Michael Jackson did not only just say a few powerful words. He repeatedly organized his life around the identity he was becoming. That is what made this shift real. And so he made obsession an identity installation. You think obsession just means you work hard, but that's just surface level. At a deeper level, obsession is concentrated identity installation. Whatever you repeatedly give your attention, energy, emotion, and action begins shaping the subconscious mind. And it's important to understand this because the subconscious mind is the key to reality. It is from which reality stems from in creation. You see, majority of people are operating in reality, majority from their unconscious behavior, not even realizing. They think that they're operating from conscious behavior, but majority of us are operating from our unconscious behavior. And your unconscious behavior is ruled by your subconscious. And that is why Carl Jung once said, if you do not make the unconscious parts of yourself conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And so at a deeper level, he understood that he must repeatedly give his attention. Wherever attention goes, energy flows. He must repeatedly give his attention into shaping this identity because he understood that if he was giving his attention, his energy to this thing, it would replace the programming in his subconscious of the old version of himself. Most people are obsessed with the wrong identity. They're obsessed with what's not working, who rejected them, the numbers are not moving, what people think about them, how hard the industry is, and about their limitations, and about proving that the old reality is true. And then they wonder why the old reality keeps repeating. Obsession is actually creative. Your focus is not just passive. Your focus is constantly feeding an identity. His obsession was different. He studied performance, movement, music, the greats, audience, movies, stage presence, timing. This matters because identity is not installed by thought alone. It's installed by repeated exposure. If you want to become a different person in your industry, you need to understand what your repeated exposure is training you to be. If you spend all day watching people complain about the market, your subconscious starts accepting struggle as normal. If you spend all day consuming creators who make your lane feel saturated, your subconscious starts accepting saturation as truth. If you spend all day checking metrics from a needy state, your subconscious starts identifying with lack. This is how people accidentally program themselves into weakness. Michael Jackson did the opposite. He exposed himself to excellence until excellence became familiar. And that is the key. He did not study greatness as a fan. He studied greatness as someone who intended to become a new category. That is a different state of consciousness. A fan studies greatness from separation. A creator studies greatness from identification. The fan says, wow, they are amazing. The creator says, what principle are they embodying that I can integrate into my own identity? This is how operators should study their field. Do not study successful people trying to worship them. Study them to extract principles. How do they think? What do they normalize? What do they ignore? What do they refuse to fear? What do they assume? How do they expect? How do they move under pressure? What standards do they hold? What does their reality reveal about their identity? Michael Jackson absorbed from the greats, but he did not become a copy. That is another important lesson. Identity shifting is not imitation. It is integration. Imitation copies the surface. Integration extracts the principle and rebuilds it through your own soul. He could have studied James Brown, Fred Astaire, Jackie Wilson, Sammy Davis Jr., and others, but the result was not a cheap copy. It became him. And that's the difference. And this is what people in business and creative fields need to understand. Do not just copy the surface of someone's success. Do not copy their funnel because you think their funnel is the source. Do not copy their content format because you think the format is the source. Extract the identity principle underneath. What are they embodying that you are not yet embodying? Conviction, risk tolerance, visibility, authority, play, emotional neutrality, maybe creative courage, relentless standards, trust, certainty. That is what you integrate. Michael Jackson studied excellence and then metabolized it into an identity. That is why he became distinct. And so he separated himself from, well, another part of his transformation is he separated himself from everybody else in the industry, like almost the industry hive mind. And I've noticed that in my work as well. I work with CEOs, entrepreneurs, day traders, music artists, influencers, and we come to this conclusion in the program. I go through the beliefs that you have in your reality. And we come to the conclusion that majority of people inherited a lot of beliefs from their industry. Every industry has a hive mind. Music has one, business has one, coaching, trading, acting, content creation, art, fitness, fashion. The hive mind is a collection of accepted beliefs that most people in that field treat as truth. It takes years to blow up. The market is saturated. Nobody is buying right now. You need connections. You need a label. You need investors. You need to be younger. You need to be older. You need a certain look. You need to follow the algorithm. You need to grind constantly. You post a certain way. You price like everybody else. You need permission. But those beliefs may look logical because everyone is experiencing them, but many people are experiencing them because they have accepted them. The hive mind gives you a reality and then convinces you that that reality is objective. Michael Jackson had to separate from several hive minds. He had to separate himself from the child star hive mind, the group member hive mind, from industry expectations, and what people thought a black artist could become on a global scale at that time. He had to separate himself from the idea that he was only an entertainer inside of an existing category. He was not merely trying to participate in the music industry. He was trying to bend the category. That requires a different identity. Most people in any field are trying to succeed inside of the current rules, but category defining people begin operating from a state that questions the rule themselves. That is where reality can be used to your advantage. Reality is not just something you react to. It's information. If everyone in your industry believes something is hard, that belief itself reveals the place where the field is hypnotized. And wherever the field is hypnotized, there is opportunity for someone who can detach. For example, if everyone in your industry believes clients are not buying, then the person who holds the identity that the right clients are always moving begins perceiving differently. They communicate differently. They sell differently. They show up differently. They notice opportunities that others filter out. They are not emotionally governed by what the collective fear. If everyone believes the algorithm is slow, the creator who does not accept slowness as an identity moves differently. They experiment differently. They produce differently. They interpret data differently. They do not let a slow week become self-definition. If everyone believes artistry requires struggle, the artist who rejects that association begins building from a different internal law. That is how you become an anomaly. Not by denying reality, but by refusing to let the collective belief become your source, not letting the external world become your source. You see, Michael Jackson's transformation required separation from the identity that others had available for him. And that is crucial. If you do not consciously define yourself, your environment will define you. Your family will, your industry will, your audience will, your past will, your failures will, your early success will define you. And sometimes early success is just as dangerous as failure because success can trap you in the identity that produced it. The Jackson 5 identity was successful, but that's what made it dangerous. It would have been easy to stay there, but he saw beyond it. And that is the lesson. Sometimes the identity you must kill is not the one that failed. It is the one that worked. And so he turned performance into a state of being. Majority of people perform their work. but he became his work. And that's where embodiment enters. Embodiment means the identity is no longer just conceptual. It's not just a thought. It begins showing up physically. Your voice changes. Your posture changes. Your timing changes. Your standards, your emotional responses, your presence, your decision making, your tolerance, your relationship with pressure changes. He did not only think about being a great artist, he embodied it through his body. And that matters because the body is one of the strongest ways the subconscious mind learns identity. Majority of people conceptualize this as the nervous system, right? There's a lot of creators saying that you must recalibrate your nervous system. We have a lot of people trying to help people recalibrate their nervous system at an internal level. And so, for example, you can say you are a high-level entrepreneur, but if every slow week, every slow month makes your nervous system collapse, your identity of being a successful entrepreneur is not yet stabilized. You can say you are a serious artist, but if you only create when you feel inspired, the identity is not yet embodied as a serious artist. You can say you're a leader, but if pressure turns you into a different person, the identity is not yet installed. His identity was installed physically through rehearsal, movement, repetition, voice, presence, performance. The body became an instrument of the identity. And so I call the physical world identity in motion. The mental plane, the mind, is where his identity lives. This is your expectations, your assumptions, your beliefs. This is where identity is formed in the mind. But the physical world is identity in motion. And so your identity cannot just stay in your head. You cannot just have a thought of who you want to be. It must enter your body. You must feel different on sales calls. You must feel different on camera. You must feel different when you're executing. You must feel different while you're creating. You must feel different in audition rooms. You must feel different under pressure. And that's why identity work is not just thinking, it is a state of being. If the new identity does not change how you move through the physical world, it is not yet fully installed. It is still theory, conjecture, a thought, a hope, a theory. But Michael Jackson's transformation became undeniable because it became visible over time. The internal state became external form, as within, so without, as above, so below. And that is manifestation. It's not magic. It's identity becoming physical. And so the main premise of identity work is he made the future self normal before the world agreed. One day I'll be that. One day I'll move like that. One day I'll be confident. One day I'll be successful. One day I'll create from that level. One day I'll command attention like that. But you see, the subconscious does not create from one day. It creates from what feels true now. As it says in Timothy, 1,000 years is but a day with the Lord, and a day is like 1,000 years. The infinite intelligence God that is inside of you, Luke 17:21, does not understand one day. The subconscious does not understand one day. It creates from what feels true now. That is why be it now matters. Not pretend it now. Be it now. That is a difference. Pretending is surface level acting. Being is internal occupation. Michael Jackson began occupying the future self internally before the world agreed. When he wrote, "I Will Be Magic," he was not waiting for someone to hand him the emotional permission to feel magical. He was programming that identity. When he wrote, "I am a new person now," he was not waiting for the public to validate the transformation. He was making an internal declaration. When he wrote, "The old me is behind," he was not asking reality if the old version was allowed to leave. He was cutting the cord. That is how identity shifts. At some point, you have to stop asking reality for permission to become who you already know you are becoming. Most people do not do this. They keep checking the mirror. They keep checking the world for validation. Is it working? Do people see me yet? Is the money coming in? Is the audience growing? Did the results change? Do they validate me? But that's not conviction. That is negotiation. Conviction means the identity has stopped negotiating with appearances. Romans 12:2. This is not delusion. This is the hierarchy of how reality is created. The cause must not be placed above the effect. If the effect is always allowed to define the cause, you will remain trapped in your current reality. If you always look for external proof to see that it's working, you will be stuck in a loop where you're waiting for the reality to give you proof, which it will never will. Michael Jackson did not let the current reflection permanently define him. He held the internal image long enough until the external reality caught up. And this is the deepest lesson in this entire masterclass. Your job is to not obsessively check whether reality has changed. Your job is to stabilize the identity that changes reality naturally. And so this is the identity shift broken down. He recognized the internal identity. That first identity was not self-created, it was inherited. Everyone has an inherited identity. And the first step was awareness. You cannot change an identity if you cannot see it. So ask yourself, who have I been trained to be? What role have I unconsciously accepted? What does my industry expect from people like me? What identity did my family give me? What identity did my past success give me? What identity did my failures give me? What version of me keeps recreating this current reality? That is the beginning. Second is he separated from the old role. He did not merely say, I wanted more success. He began separating the old role itself. You cannot install a new identity while still emotionally fused with the old one. If you still become the old self every time reality triggers you, the old identity is still dominant. If a slow week makes you become scarce or scared or in fear, you are still fused with the old self. If criticism makes you feel invisible, you are still fused. If a failed launch makes you become powerless, you are still fused. Separation means if this is an old pattern, it's not my old identity. This is not my true self. The old me from Michael was the separation statement, or the separation from the statement itself. Every operator needs their own version. This is not just an affirmation. It's psychological severing. For example, here's some example statements. The version of me who needs the market to validate me is behind. That's what I was teaching my day traders. You don't need the market to validate the fact that you are an already successful trader. The version of me who collapses under pressure is behind. The version of me who waits for permission is behind. The version of me who sees visibility as danger is behind. That is how you begin weakening the old structure. You have to become aware of it. And then you have to install a new identity while not being emotionally tied to the old one. You have to understand that reality is architectural. Everything that you experience in the external world is actually here to showcase something internally that is still holding you back. And that is one of the beautiful things about what I do, is that I'm able to read reality. And I'm able to see the lens from which reality is structured. You think that the same patterns and loops are just coincidences. Reality is structured. The ancients understood this. If you study Hermeticism, if you study ancient societies, ancient cultures, they understood that reality was very structural. It was not random. That is why they studied the subconscious mind. That is why they studied dreams. That's why the ancient Egyptian pharaohs, they had they had people that interpreted their dreams because they understood that reality was not a bunch of random coincidences. It was structural. Everything had meaning. But because you don't think it has meaning, you're going through your life thinking things just happen to you without realizing that reality is showing you the internal parts of yourself that you're still running away from, as within, so without, and as above, so below. 3, he defined the new identity clearly. I will be magic. It's clear. It's not technically detailed, but it's energetically precise. It's like, I am going to perform in a way where it feels like I am magic. And this is what people need to understand. The desired identity should not be vague. It should not just say, I will want to be successful. You need to define who this person is. I am going to be a calm, precise, trusted business owner who receives money cleanly, consistently, without emotional chaos. I am an artist whose work creates a world where people want to enter it repeatedly. I am a disciplined trader who follows the plan without emotional distortion. I am an actor who disappears into the role and commands attention without needing approval. The new identity must become specific enough for your nervous system to practice it every single day. And that leads us into the next step, is repeated until the new identity became familiar. Identity requires repetition, not one journal entry, not one meditation, not one inspired day or week. Repetition. He repeatedly went through the identity through notes, rehearsal, study, performance, creative immersion, and physical embodiment. And that is how the subconscious learns. The subconscious accepts what is repeated with emotional charge. That means your identity work needs to be repetition. Daily. What do you think from? What do you feel from? What do you rehearse internally? What do you expose yourself to? What do you allow in your mind? The goal is to not feel inspired. The goal is to make the new identity normal. And normal is the key. You do not rise to your desires. You return to what feels normal. So if your current normal is stress, you will recreate stress. If your current normal is inconsistency, you will recreate inconsistency. If your current normal is being unseen, you will recreate invisibility. And this is what made him excellent. Performance, precision, and creative expansion. He made it normal. And that is why the outer world eventually reflected it. And so, how do you use his method in your field? Step 1, identify the identity your current reality is reflecting. Do not start with the goal. Start with the mirror. Look at your current results and ask, what identity would naturally create this? If your business is inconsistent, what identity creates inconsistency? If your content is not landing, what identity creates unclear communication? If your sales calls feel heavy, what identity creates tension around being paid? If you keep procrastinating, what identity finds the next level unsafe? It's not self-attack, it's a diagnosis. Reality is information. Your current life is showing you what has been normal internally. And so step 1 is read your reality. Identify the identity your current reality is reflecting. Start with the mirror. Look at your current results and ask yourself, what has naturally created this? Now, step 2 is you want to define what your subconscious may believe the next level will cost you. And this is what I do. I remove subconscious blocks because most people don't realize that they have subconscious associations with the thing they want. They say they want more money. They say they want more success. They say they want love. And they believe that having this thing consciously is going to be safe. But subconsciously, that is the real definition. That is what's really manifesting the thing they want. They say they want more money, but when they manifest money, they get collapse, pressure, procrastination, fear, worry. They say they want a love life. They say they want someone to love, but they manifest toxic relationships, betrayal, people that cheat on them. So they may consciously desire it, but your subconscious definition is what's actually manifesting the thing. And so what I'm showing you in step 2 is you must define what your subconscious believes that next level will cost you. Because if you understand what the subconscious believes this thing will cost you, you will understand why you don't have it yet and how to define the next level. And so the real block that most people have is they never define what the negatives of getting what they actually want. And I know what you're going to say. Let's use money as an example. How can having more money be negative? Well, look at your childhood. Look at your experiences with money. If you're a person that struggles with money, look at your childhood. How did you grow up with money? What experiences have you had with money? What are your most emotionally intense observations or experiences with money? If you grew up watching your parents work hard for money, don't you believe that you would have inherited a belief that you must also work hard for money? And so you think having more money consciously is safe, but to your subconscious mind, it believes that having more money means I have to work really, really hard. And that is why you only manifest money when you work hard. And that is why money is not flowing easily and effortlessly to you. And so you must define that next level of your life. What would be the negatives of you actually receiving that? You think you want the fame and you don't have negatives in your mind? What about more people seeing you, more people judging you, the people in your circles, more people entering your world? What would be the negative about you actually getting what you want? What would more success demand from me? What would more visibility expose me to? What would money change in my relationships? What would more responsibility force me to hold? What would happen if I no longer hide behind my potential? This is where people discover the split. Consciously, they say they want the next level, but subconsciously, they fear the cost. For Michael Jackson, the new identity required leaving behind the safety of the group image and stepping into an entirely new level of visibility, scrutiny, and responsibility. For you, it may be different. Maybe more money means more pressure, more judgment, more clients means more loss of peace, more success means more isolation, more recognition means people expecting more from you. Until you identify the hidden cost, you will not understand why part of you resists the thing you want to be. Step 3 is create the new identity with precision. Do not write vague nonsense. Define the new self. Ask, who am I when this reality is already normal? What do I believe? What do I expect? What do I no longer react to? What feels normal to me? Write down on a piece of paper the new self. Define who this person would be in this new reality. Who would they be if they already had this life? How would they believe? They expect? How would they no longer react to? What would feel normal for them? What do I no longer make personal? What standards do I hold? How do I move when pressure appears? How do I interpret delay? How do I handle money? How do I handle attention? How do I handle being seen? How do I handle responsibility? This is how you build the identity. Michael Jackson's word was magic, but your word may be something different. Magnetic, luxury, unshakable, commanding, inevitable is my word. Choose the identity that fits your field. But do not just choose something just because it sounds cool. Choose it because it changes how you operate. Step 4. Install it through repetition. Now you make it familiar. Every day you rehearse the new self. Not by just affirming it, by thinking from it already being done. Before the sales call, how does the version of me who is already trusted and paid enter this call? Before creating, how does the version of me whose work matters approach this? Before trading, how does the version of me who executes cleanly behavior? Before posting, how does the version of me who is already visible communicate? This is the real use of imagination, not fantasy, rehearsal. You rehearse the state before the world confirms it, and then you act from it. Remember, the mind cannot tell the difference between what is real and what is imagined. And so by you imagining it before you do it, you're training the subconscious mind to know you are this thing before it shows it to you physically. And lastly, you just embody it. You bring the identity into your body. You change who you are at an internal level, not as a performance, but as a training. Your body, your nervous system must learn the new identity. Michael Jackson did this through movement and performance, but you do it through your field. You do it through your stage, your business, your content, your sales calls, your trading desk, your meetings. Everything is a stage, and the stage will reveal the new identity in motion. And then all you do from there is maintain it. Maintain the identity when reality contradicts it. And this is when the real work begins for most people, is the contradiction. You can do it when you feel good. You can do it when reality is pleasing you, when it's showing you good things. But what happens when it doesn't work? What happens when the numbers drop? What happens when your posts don't work? What happens when a client says no? What happens when you lose opportunities? What happens when the old fear comes back? What happens when the market starts turning backwards? What happens when your nervous system wants to collapse? What happens when reality is showing you the opposite of what you want? What happens when your mind is fighting you? This is when you practice the new identity. This is when you define or say, this is not who I am. This is not the definition. This does not define me. This is an event, not an identity. I do not become the old self because the mirror is still updating. I remain, I am that I am. I remain the new identity. And this is how you stabilize the new identity in a form, by refusing to become the old self under pressure. You see, what majority of people don't understand, and I talked about it early in this episode, and I didn't want to go deep into the reality architecture that I teach. And I have episodes on this already about the deeper levels of how reality is organized. And I'm going to make a video on this next week. But majority of people don't understand that the reason why they experience fear, anxiety, worry, depression, sadness in their mind, or they manifest external events outside of them in their physical reality that you would classify as negative, they don't understand that that's happening where the mind and physical reality is giving them negative energy or negative experience, because they have in their subconscious stored beliefs, patterns, emotional experiences, observations, where they hold those beliefs to be true. And so they're still operating from those stored beliefs internally. And that is why they keep manifesting those things. You think it's just a coincidence that your mind is telling you that you're not worthy of that money, that success, that relationship, being online. You think it's just a coincidence that your reality is showing you more of what you don't want? It's structural. Reality is showing you these things because you have deeply stored them in your subconscious mind. You have deeply stored them in your body. And reality must reflect the person standing in front of it. And so when you're trying to change reality, when you're trying to change self, when you're trying to change your identity, the subconscious mind, which has stored patterns, beliefs, experiences, emotional observations, it must still reflect that to you, because you're saying to the subconscious that I am no longer this person. And yet the subconscious mind says, but that is who you have been this entire time. And so it is realizing that there's a contradiction happening. You are saying that you're changing, but for all I've known, you've been this person. And so it must reflect those patterns back to you to see if you have truly changed. And that's where most people fail in the process, is that they go through that in reality. They go through the experience of reality. They go through those negative experiences, those negative events, the rejection, the business slows, they get denied. Something happens externally which you would perceive as negative, or the mind starts fighting them. You're not good enough. You're not worthy. You're going to fail. What if you lose? And they interpret that as failure, that it's not working, or I'm doing something wrong, not understanding that they're actually doing everything right. The reason why your subconscious mind is attacking your mind or manifesting something external that you would classify as negative is because you're killing it. You're killing the old self. You're killing the old identity. And because you're killing the old identity, it must now fight back. It must now try to see if you really have changed. And by refusing to react to the same external circumstances that you have been reacting to, or refusing to accept the beliefs the mind is trying to show you of who you are, you finally change the identity at the internal cause. And then now the subconscious mind knows you have a new baseline. And now once you get a new baseline, your identity changes, and now reality can now reflect the new internal state you have. And so my final message for you guys is this on identity shifting. Michael Jackson did not become one of the greatest artists of all time by merely wanting it. He did not become that by positive thinking alone. He became it through identity transformation. He separated from the inherited self, and he defined the new self, and he programmed that repeatedly. He studied greatness until excellence became familiar. He embodied the identity physically. He organized his life around that identity, and he maintained the internal image until reality reflected it. That is the real mechanism. And that is what you must understand for your own life. You do not need to become MJ. You need to understand what he demonstrated. The old identity has a range. If you stay inside that identity, your reality will keep returning to that range. You may get temporary wins. You may get moments of momentum. You may receive opportunities. You may make more money for a season. You may get attention for a moment. But if the identity does not change, reality reorganizes back around the dominant self. That is why identity work is not optional for high-level transformation. Well, that is why identity work is not just optional for a high-level transformation. It's the foundation. Because your field is not just responding to your actions. It's responding to the state behind your actions. Your business is responding to your identity. Your audience is responding to your identity. Your art, your execution, your opportunities, your reality is responding to who you are being in the present moment. Exodus 3:14, I am that I am. And so the question is not, how do I force reality to change? The question is, who must I become for this reality to become natural? And that is the question Michael Jackson answered for his life. And once you answer it for yours, everything changes. Because the goal is not to chase the future. The goal is to become the identity for whom that future is already normal. That is how the old self dies. That is how the new self stabilizes. And that is how reality begins to move. And that is how identity becomes destiny. I'll see you guys in the next one. Oh, forgot to mention, if you're a CEO, entrepreneur, day trader, coach, consultant, influencer, I only work with people that are making sub 20, 30 plus K a month right now. My program is priced at a certain level. If you're stuck in a revenue ceiling, you're stuck in your progress, or you know you need an identity shift to that next level, click the description below, book a one-on-one call. Let's get you on a call. I'm working with a lot of clients right now in this quarter, and they're seeing astronomical changes. I'm about to release some testimonials from some of these clients coming out. And if you're looking for that next level of your life, and you know that it requires an identity change, and you know that there's something internally blocking you and you can't figure it out for yourself yet, I have the solution to your problem. Let's get it done. Stop wasting your time. Let's go ahead and get started. I'll see you guys in the next one.